Hey everybody, I'm Brad Miller, and today with Jason Medford, and we are walking a spiritual path with you. And today we're going to talk about love, and not just any love, not just Cupid love, not just, puppy love or, all these things like that, but we're going to talk about self-love, loving ourselves, giving ourselves self-care, um, you know, treating ourselves, I should say, as number one. As I like to tell my daughter, that if you don't love yourself, no one else will. Right. So, Jason, how does this apply to spirituality? Because this is like, okay, that's great. We're talking about loving yourself. How's that?
Well, Brad, let me tell you, because it's what we're supposed to talk about today, but neither one of us are quite sure where we're supposed to go with this. So we're just going to go, right?
Mhm.
Um, but I think, like you said, there are um, a lot of times when we're on the path, what the world teaches or the indoctrinations we've been given, the actual thing to do is 180 degrees opposite of what they're saying, right? And so I'll give you an example because you just mentioned one right there, right? You got to take care of number one. Oh, but Brad, that's being selfish,
Right.
right? That's what the world tries to tell us. Oh no, you're being selfish if you're looking after yourself first, right? And so I think most people on this planet don't care for themselves first. They care for other people first, right? They believe that if they're doing things, to make themselves happy, to do what they want to do, that they're being selfish. And so instead, they should spend all of their time and all of their energy making everybody else, happy.
Hmm.
All the time, they're making themselves miserable, right? And
Yep.
so it's a big lie that's out there, and it's a twisted truth, right? It's a twisted truth because, without knowing ourselves, without loving ourselves, we can't love anybody else, right? If you can't love yourself, you really can't love someone else. And what's interesting with that word love, right? And self-love, right? I mean, we can make all kinds of jokes about that one.
It's true, but we might get kicked off the air if we try to make some of them. So,
If it's inappropriate behavior. Um,
yeah.
but no, the reality is in English, we have one word for love. And it's so limiting to
Hmm.
have one word. And again, that's probably on purpose, you know, because in other languages, I want to say like in Hindi, there's 30 different words for love. The Greeks had five or six. I mean, because there's different kinds of love, right? And
Hmm.
so most of the time when we think about love, we think about, romantic love, eros, sort of a thing. Um, but it's more than that. Really what we're trying to talk about here is unconditional love, right? The basis of God, of the universe. God is love. A lot of people will say, and really everything kind of comes back to love, even though we don't realize it. And I'll try to share a little bit, with you. Okay, if you're familiar with the chakra system in the
Hmm.
body, right? At least what's kind of taught. We have different chakras, right? And the bottom three are mainly about survival, sexual energy, that kind of stuff. It's not really until you get to the heart chakra that you're putting yourself above just the basic needs. If you
Mm-hmm.
are familiar, like with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, same
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing, right? As you move up those hierarchy of needs, once you get to a certain point, then you can start doing things like self-actualization and some of these other things, right? And in a way, it's that way in our chakra system too, right? That our lower chakras, while they're important, um, they have a lot more to do with 3D than they do the spiritual. And what's interesting is really once you get to the heart chakra and above, and again, heart we put with love, right? Love emanates from our heart chakra. Um, once you get to that point, the game changes. And so that's really where a lot of this work does happen. And so everything does kind of come back to love. Um, Love of ourself, love of fellow human beings, love of everything on this world, the winged ones, the four-leggeds, the rocks, the trees, everything. Love for the star brothers and sisters and other beings that are out there, for our guides, for God, for whatever, you believe in, right? And coming from a place of decisiveness, of dualism, back into a unity consciousness of love. That's the big game. That's the big game. And the problem, with it is that our head and our heart are not connected on most of us, right? There's been a cutting off of our head with our heart. And so where do most of us spend our time? In our head, right?
Mm-hmm.
Brad's an attorney, I'm a CPA by training, right? We get stuck in our head, we get taught in our head. Our academic system is in our head, right? Thinking versus feeling in our heart. And so a lot of people, I mean, one of the things that I've been taught by my mentor is the longest distance is the 17 inches between your head and your heart, right? Because some people never make that journey. We never get to that feeling space. We never, fully activate our heart chakra. We never connect with other people heart to heart, right? We're always in our head. And I'll tell you a really kind of embarrassing story about me. At one point in my life, it's like I'm in a relationship and I'm sitting there and I'm like, do I love this person? And I'm like, well, I think I love this person. And so what do?
Mm-hmm.
I start coming out with like a T account thing,
Pros and cons, and do I
pros and
like?
cons and all this stuff. And it's like, well, I think I love him. Do I? It's like, no, you either
Did you
do or
pull
you.
the petals off the flower, though? That's the question.
She loves, no, that's for
I love
she
her.
loves me. She loves me
Well,
not.
but
No.
I love her. I love her not. You could go that way.
Oh, that would have been, I could have done that. No, I didn't do that. But see, I was stuck in my head trying
Hmm.
to logically justify that I love this person. Oh, well, I do this for them,
Right.
and I do that for them, and I make this sacrifice for them, and I blah, 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 right? I'm in my mind.
Hmm.
I'm thinking. Love doesn't come from your brain, it comes from your heart,
Right.
right? And so, that's, I think, one big takeaway, to start with is, the Beatles were right. All you need is love. Ba-ba-da-da-da,
Do-do-do-do. Hmm.
right? Um, and everything comes back to love. In fact, I mean, John Lennon is my favorite Beatle. Love all of them, but I just resonate with John more. And he kept coming back to peace and love, peace and love, peace and love were the message of almost his whole life, right?
Hmm.
And that, because that's really the grounding of, where all of this, what it's all about, right? We get sent here, we forget. We got to learn how to do it again. We got to reconnect, and get from our head to our heart and start, loving everything, being in unity consciousness, right? So
Mhm.
I'm going to pause for a minute before we kind of jump into the self love because I've just been blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, no, you went a couple different places there, and something I did want to go back and touch upon. You talked about the idea of that we tend to have that putting yourself first is selfish. And this is actually something that I run into a lot with lawyers because being in the law, just like being a CPA is a helping profession, it's a serving profession. So most of the time people go into things like that because they want to help others. They want to do something for other people. It could also be coaching, it could be medical professions, counseling, and things like that. But we go into it because we have this desire, we want to help people. And so we often think that that means that we have to put others before ourselves. And this is a big problem in the law, is that lawyers tend to put their clients ahead of themselves because the thought is, well, I'm helping other people, the clients. Like that's number one priority is the clients, client first. And that's bad. That's wrong because when you do that, you are not looking out for yourself. And some people say, well, that's selfish if you try to put yourself first and you worry about yourself before your clients. No, it's actually not selfish because what you are doing is when you put yourself first, you are making sure that you are at 100%. You're making sure that you're at the top of your game, that you are healthy, that you are mentally, physically, emotionally, all that stuff strong. And that allows you to give your best to others.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure we've all been sick at some point and trying to do some work. We've got a deadline coming up or something we promised to a client or something, but we just feel like crap. So we're sitting here, maybe our nose is all stuffed up and we can't really breathe, or we ache and we're just trying to chug through and get some stuff done because we promised it, or a boss says that we have to have a deadline, whatever. How good of a quality is that work really? I mean, is that really our best quality work? No, it's not. It's substandard for what we normally would do. It's definitely not our best. And if we look at it, obviously at the time, we that's the best we can do. But if we step back and look at this from a third person perspective, and they would say, all right, here is what you normally do. And here's what you did yesterday when you were feeling sick and miserable and, couldn't breathe and had an ache and all that kind of stuff. And they didn't know that. They just saw 2 days worth of work. Objectively, they would say, well, this work that you did yesterday is crap. Like, this is not the same quality. You're not providing the same assistance service that you are with this other stuff. What happened? Something was up in here, right? And I think the problem is that when we focus so much on the clients, that we focus so much on the helping, we let ourselves go. We work too long. We don't work out. We eat like crap. We don't spend time with ourselves. We don't, to quiet our minds, to have a spiritual practice like this. We're always busy rushing, rushing, rushing. Got to get our stuff done. Got to work on help the clients. Oh, the client calls me at 8 o'clock at night. Got to answer that. Oh, got to respond to this email, at 2 in the morning because that's when the client's calling, and it wears you down, and you can't give your best if you're worn down, if you're burnt out, if you are not well. And so, really, it's not selfish to be thinking of yourself first in front of your clients. It's selfless because it's allowing you to actually do your best when you give to others. And so that's a big thing that I kind of preach to other lawyers particularly, but it applies to professionals all across the board. People who are trying to serve and help others is if you let yourself go down, you're not going to be able to help others the best. I mean, I'm sure we've all gone on an airplane, and when the first thing they do and they talk about where the emergency exits are, and you know, here's the lights are way on the thing, and they give you all the hand signals and such, they also say about, hey, if for whatever reason the plane loses altitude, oxygen levels decrease, oxygen masks will fall out from the ceiling. And they always say, not, help the person next to you get theirs on first. They always say you put your own mask on first because they know that if you don't take care of yourself and put your own mask on, you're not going to be able to properly help the person next to you. And the person next to you might be your kid. It might be a significant other. It might be some family member, someone who can't help themselves as well. And so if you're trying to put their stuff on first and you aren't able to do your best because you don't have your mask on, are you really helping them at the end of the day? You may think it is, your intention might be there, but are you really helping them? And so I just really want to hit on that point that you brought up, and emphasize that, because that's a really big thing that, again, a lot of professional service individuals, we tend to just kind of shrug off. Um, but it's huge. Like if you don't love yourself enough to take care of it first, you're not going to be able to help others.
Yeah, and it goes, you listed a few things, right? If we don't love ourselves enough to actually get the rest that we need,
Hmm.
right? To take time to actually sleep, to eat, nutritious food, right? To exercise, to have spiritual practices, meditate, yoga, whatever you choose to do. Like you said, it's every day we wake up effectively as a brand new battery, right? And then slowly throughout the day, we're doing things, we're using energy, our battery level starts to go down. Now, the nice thing is we're rechargeable batteries. And so we can do things to help recharge our batteries, right? And so that's why again, if you're tired, some things you can do. Sometimes we're tired because we're dehydrated. You can drink some water, see if that makes a difference,
Yep.
right? You can take a little nap. You could get up and go outside for a walk, get some stuff going through your body. You could have some food, coffee, something to give yourself a little energy because maybe your body is physically worn down because it's like, hello, we don't have any gas in the fuel tank. So if
Hmm.
you'd like your body to keep going, you got to, put some fuel in,
Hmm.
right? And those are things that help to recharge our battery physically, right? It's the same way energetically and spiritually as well. Stopping, doing a gratitude practice, going outside, sitting with a tree, meditating, whatever it is that gets you going, doing that during the day helps to recharge your battery because you need to have a charged battery in order to serve your clients and help out this world from a spiritual standpoint, as well too. And but most of us, we just let our battery keep going and going and going and going, and all of a sudden it's flashing, like that red
Hmm.
flashing light, like, plug me in or I'm going to go offline in a few minutes, right? We get
Hmm.
to that point.
2% battery remaining sort of deals. Yeah.
Yeah, 2% battery, right? And it goes back to like your example with the work. If you're sick and everything else, well, your battery's drained. You're doing your work maybe on 20% charge. And obviously that work is not going to be as good as if you're at 80%, right? And so that's why it's not selfish to take time for ourselves. It's not selfish to put the oxygen mask on first. It's not selfish to spend a half an hour a day reading or doing whatever you need to do, playing music, whatever lights you up, right?
Hmm.
To be able to recharge you and get you in the place that you need to be at. But, we don't do that so much of the time because we put others first. We put these other indoctrinations or beliefs,
Hmm.
first. Well, if I'm a good mommy or if I'm a good daddy, then I have to do this. If I'm a good lawyer, if I'm a good doctor, then, this is what's expected of me.
Hmm.
And bringing up doctors, it's just funny because again, that's just popped into me. But it's like, uh, how many doctors are fat and unhealthy, and then we go to them for advice? It's like there has to be some self care, to that kind of authentically goes along with what we say we're doing too, right? I mean, there has to be that correlation. And I know in a lot of times in some technical professions, like law and CPAs, there's training requirements each year, right? Because the idea is, you have to be learning, you have to be developing, you have to be growing, you have to show that you know what you're talking about, right? And so there's little compliance rules and things that are put in place, to show that, to keep your law
Mhm.
license, to keep your CPA license, right? But it's that way in our life too, right? To where it's like, if we're not doing certain things, then we're living a lie in how we're trying to perceive or have other people perceive us as well, right? To where it's like if we hate ourselves, hate ourselves, don't like to be alone with ourselves, think all these horrible thoughts about what a nasty person we are. But then we try to go out there in the world and we try to be, oh, I'm this lovey dovey Grammy, who hates themselves. How does that come across? It comes across fake,
Mhm. Inauthentic, yeah.
inauthentic, right? Because, that's why you have to love yourself before you can love other people.
Mhm.
And it goes with everything, right? It's like, I mean, I know some people who are, spiritual guru, that's not the right word, but these, spiritual teachers that have huge followings, and they're not living what they're teaching, and it's,
Mhm.
it eventually it all crumbles down.
Yeah.
And for all of us, and again, that's why we have to know ourselves, we have to be authentic, we have to take time for ourselves, we have to love ourselves, and do those things to be who we really truly are authentically before we can go out and serve, before
Mhm.
we can go out and do these other things, right? And I mean, I know, like Brad, we talked about this before, where it's like, you had to wear a suit and tie, and that was the kind of lawyer that you had to show up or felt like you had to show up as out in the marketplace. Now you don't, right? Because you're not that straight laced suit and tie kind of person. I'm not the straight laced, suit and tie CPA, whatever else I do either, right? And so I don't live that way anymore.
Mhm.
Because in order for me to do what I need to do, I have to love myself. And part of that means having to be myself and be
Mhm.
okay being myself.
Mhm.
And that's a lot where I think self love, really comes.
Mhm. Yeah. Authenticity, I think, is comes from self-love. You can't be true to yourself. I mean, I know there's a big push right now for being authentic. Like it's one of the buzzwords you hear on social media, different places is, authenticity, being authentic and stuff like that. Um, and yeah, it's overused, and I think a lot of people, it's turned into a buzzword, and people may or may not really understand what that is and all whatever. But there's still, I think, some truth behind that is that you want to come across as who you really are. You don't people don't want fake you out there. They want the real Jason. They don't want the button suited up, tie and everything else type of person if that's not who you really are. Because they can tell, people can tell if the picture that they're given doesn't match up with what's really behind it. I know we've talked about, feeling the energies and things like that. Um, but this is even just kind of more basic level that we as humans can tell if what we see in front of us does not match up with the person behind it. We can tell something just feels off about this person. We may not be able to put our finger on it. We may not be able to say, "Up, that's what it is." They're just, they're not that kind of a person, but we still can tell that something feels off to us. We feel the dissonance there between what we see and what we kind of feel. And so it's important to be that way, but you can't be authentic. You can't really be you. You can't let others, you can't put yourself out in front of others like you really are unless you have that self-love. I mean, and there's a lot of things that go with it. Confidence is in there. Self-care is part of this, making sure you take care of the sleep and the eat, the nutritional, that kind of stuff are part of self-love. Um, Taking self of you. I think it's another part of it is having boundaries is self-love. Deciding what's really important to you. What are your values? What are the things that are really, truly important to you? And putting boundaries around them, putting walls up so that those don't get impeded upon. You know, if it's really important that you are there for your child's soccer practices, to be there to get them from school to a soccer practice, to be there to be able to bring them home. Like, if that's really important to you, then you need to put up a wall to say, you know what, I've got to leave work. I got to stop doing stuff in time to get my kid to soccer practice. Like, you can't say, well, it's important, but oh, I'm not going to do it this week, honey. Can you take him to soccer practice? I've got something I have to finish up. And then the next time, oh, honey, you know what? I'm sorry, I've got something else. The client really needs me to get this done, or my boss asked me to do this. Can you do this? And then week after week, you're not there to take him to soccer practice. Because you don't have that boundary set up. And I think so. I think boundaries, self-love, um, something that again, I see a lot of talk about it on social media, importance of boundaries. It's really hard to do. And maybe that's a whole nother episode is on boundaries, something that we do, and how that's part of kind of, spiritual growth and such. Um, but yeah, I think it's important. And I feel like every episode I come to this, that, this is important to your spiritual growth and being on the path, whatever. But I really do think that self-love is really important. Um,
Well, it does, and
I, I
it ties back to a lot of the stuff that we talked before about too. Like,
and I think self-love, I think the spiritual path is self-love. I mean, maybe that's what it comes down to for me, is that going on this path, following this path, this is self-love.
yeah, and part of it is, like you said, letting go maybe of some of the beliefs that we had
Mhm.
before, right? Which again can be hard to do, because I'll tell you, I think I was a good dad. I think I've done the best I can, but to a lot of people, I'm not a good dad, right? A lot of the beliefs that people have about what a good dad is,
Mhm.
they'd probably judge me and put me in the bad dad category. Um, but that's okay, right? Because again, if I have to be comfortable with myself. I have to love myself. I have to be okay with who I am, right? And this is again where the self-love and the authenticity really kind of comes back. And again, like Brad said, there's a lot of people talking about authenticity, but check out the energy of the people that are talking. Are they really being authentic, or are they like, hey, come be like me and you'll be authentic?
Well,
Well,
authenticity,
they
they're selling you something. A lot
they're
of times
selling
they're
you
selling you
something.
something by saying
Yeah,
authenticity. They want you to buy their course or whatever like that, and they'll teach you how to be authentic. Or, it's the example you showed about talk about the doctors who are overweight and whatever. Yes, they may say authenticity, and yes, I think it really is important. But are they actually showing it? Are they doing it themselves?
no, because it is important. It is one of the things on the spiritual path.
Hmm.
Again, people don't teach it a lot, but know yourself and be yourself are two of the most important things that you can do in this world. It's why we're here. We forget who we are so we can remember who we are. We can learn lessons by being who we are through our experiences in this world. And part of that is, when you know who you are, then you need to be unashamedly yourself, right? And just kind of, be and do who you are regardless of what other people may think, right? Because you can't truly give to the world, right? Unless you are actually being true to yourself, because each of us has different gifts that we bring a uniqueness to this world, right? So there's been plenty of famous painters, right? Monet, Picasso, Turner. I mean, whoever you happen to like, they all have a different art. They all
Mhm.
painted somewhat differently. Some people prefer one over the other, right? Some people admire and respect and love all of it, right?
Mhm.
But imagine a world without some of those people, right? We need, everybody with those different arts, with those different perspectives, with the different personalities to make this life complete. And again, that's where, some of the self-love comes in. You really can't be authentic if you don't love yourself. Why? Because we're afraid of what other people will think, right? Because we're placing their love or their esteem or their respect of us over what we think about ourselves.
Mhm.
And if that's the case, you can never truly be authentic. You're never truly loving yourself until you get to that point where, hey, you know what? This is the way I am. Brad, I didn't get up this morning and put on my makeup and I didn't even shower today. Right? Some people
I
are,
couldn't tell, Jason. I mean,
you couldn't tell. You
you
couldn't
still
tell.
looked rosy today,
I
and
did try to comb my beard, but it's a little crazy even still. But it's like, you know what? This is who I am. I'm not going to put on makeup. I'm not going to put on a filter. I do try to wear different hats, but I wear a lot of the same clothes because they're the ones that I like. Right? I just try to wear the different hats so people know, you know, it's a different day.
right,
Jason
it's a
must
different.
be
Yeah,
on a
it's not Jay.
different
We're
day.
not doing these all like 50 in the same time.
No,
Yeah, back to back. Hmm.
but and I'm still learning. I'm still learning to love myself because there's still times maybe when I do things or I don't do things and I'm like, oh, Jason, why'd you do that? Right. But I have to be, patient with myself and love myself and realize, hey, sometimes it's just the way I am. And I need to be comfortable in just being who I am. I'm not a perfectionist. Never have been. It drives me nuts when people try to be perfect. Um, but a lot of people look at my, it's good enough and think that I'm sloppy or that I don't have pride in what I do. I'm just a practical person, right? And remember, where I came from. I like flannel shirts and blue jeans and work boots. And I mean, I come from kind of a farmer, blue collar, type of trade background in my family. Um, even though I've got, master's degree and, very smart, but I also don't try to pretend that I'm an intellectual and philosophize and go to the club and talk about this and that with whatever posh people are there and
The
try to
British
make
accent,
myself.
apparently.
Yeah, well, because the British are more posh than we are in America.
Apologize for all those that listen to us that are British.
And my horrible accent,
Yeah.
but it's who I am, right? I mean, again, sometimes I break out into some crummy, accent. Hey, I wouldn't pass off in the movies. Couldn't go be an actor. That's okay, right? But
Hmm.
it's who I am. I mean, if I'm so worried about what other people are going to think about me, as opposed to just doing what I feel like I should do, right? Then I'm not loving myself. I'm not being authentic to myself. And whenever we do that, right, and again, this is where this tie comes back into spirituality, where a lot of people are going to be like, "Oh no, 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 no." Well, if if we're worried about the judgment of others, then we're in a lower vibrational frequency.
Hmm.
If we give a damn what other people think about us, we're not in a high frequency. Right? It's the time when you can actually let go and not worry
Hmm.
about it, be indifferent, not care what other people, you know, quit looking for outside approval and instead look for internal approval. Right? At the end of the day, can you say, okay, if I'm honest with myself, how well did I do today? Well, I think I did pretty well today. I was true to who I am. I think I made decisions that were in my highest and best interest. I think I've treated people with love and kindness today, right? What do we think internally, right? Because if we can answer those questions and be happy with that, it doesn't matter what the outside believes. I mean, we just talked about letting others have their own experience, right? Well, somebody else may have looked at the way that I interacted with him and said, "Oh no, he wasn't loving and kind to me. He was an asshole to me today." Well, that's their opinion, right? That's their experience. But maybe I was triggering somebody from a place of love and kindness because that's what
Hmm.
I felt like I needed to do, right? And so, it's not about the approval of others. Um, it's about the approval of yourself. And I know this is going to sound a little sacrilegious too for those of you that have much more of a religious belief system. It doesn't even matter what God thinks. Okay. It matters what's in here because what does God want for you? He wants you to be happy. He wants you to be yourself. He wants you to be in those high frequency vibrations, right? And so it's not about even trying to please God or please your partner or please your kids or please anybody else. It's about ourself, but it's not selfish, it's selfless, right? Because until we do that, we really can't serve and love other people the way we need to.
It doesn't matter when you ask yourself, when you look back at your day and say, how was my day? Was I authentic on that stuff? Really true self love, the answer doesn't matter. You can say, I didn't really think I was authentic today, but I still love myself anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's true self love. That's the unconditional love that you mentioned earlier. That's what we're going for. It doesn't matter how you approached your day. It doesn't matter that you cut somebody off in the parking lot. It doesn't matter that someone thought that you were an asshole in the conversation or that you only gave them a thumbs up and didn't want to start engaging. You didn't help them feed their cats.
Yep.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you don't think you did your best. If you look back and you say, you know what? Today I was just off, man. Like, I don't know what it was. I just wasn't feeling it. I just really do my best. The things that I said just weren't really me. Like, this was just a rough day. It doesn't matter. If you can just say, you know what? I still love myself regardless. That's all that matters at the end of the day.
Yep. And it's hard for us to do sometimes because we've been so conditioned, the other way.
Right?
But I think you bring up a good point, Brad, too, is it's like, even if we don't feel like we've done our best, I mean, we strive to do our best every
Sure.
day.
Right.
But it's just like, again, if you think about, somebody that we may love, a child, a pet, or whatever, you know, whatever you have
Mhm.
strong love for, we wouldn't berate them, if we unconditionally love them, if they make a mistake. It's like,
Mhm.
well, okay, well, next time we can do better,
Right.
and if we can treat ourselves that way too, like, oh, maybe I didn't really probably do my best today. I could have handled that conversation different. What did I learn from it? Okay, well, and next time I'll do a better job. But
Mhm.
I'm still comfortable with who I am, and love myself for who I am. And
Mhm.
and I think too, it's, one of the things that's come back to me recently too is we show love by the way we give love. And so, when we think about how we're treating ourselves and how we're treating others, that's how we're giving love. And so, even even at the times when maybe we want to get hard on ourselves, we can say, well, but you know what? I took time for myself today. I showed myself some love. I showed other people love, by how I'm living and how I'm doing and doing the best I can, at any given point, and just realize that it's okay. It's good enough. It's all we have to do. It's all we have to do.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. So self-love.
hmm
I think it gets thrown around a bit. I think people don't, I don't want to say they don't know what it means, but I feel like it's more they don't have the full understanding of exactly what's behind it. People think that it's, oh, well, self-love is that I love myself and I have, you know, I have a rough day that I still come back and say, okay, you're still great, me. Yeah, that's part of it. But I mean, like I said, I mentioned before, I feel that, maybe the spiritual path is self-love, that going on the spiritual path is really looking for, trying to figure out who you are and really what is more loving to yourself than trying to figure out who you really are. Being happy with who you are, but knowing that you're more than just that and doing something for yourself, taking the path, taking the steps, doing the practices.
no, and I think that's a beautiful way to kind of summarize up, what we're talking about today. That really, I think, a lot of it is it's really is a lot of the path, and it's one of these. It's like the onion that keeps getting pulled back. The more we
Mhm.
understand it, the less we understand it, the more we have to learn. But whatever it means to you, you know, this week, can you have a little bit more self love for
Right.
yourself? Can you learn to love yourself a little bit more so you can learn to love others more as
Yeah.
well? So,
With that, we thank you guys for listening. We hope you had a great time with us today. And now I had a great time with you, with Jason, with all our listeners. Even though I can't see them, um, I can still feel the energy behind it. So have a great week filled with lots of love for yourself and for others. And we will catch you guys on the next episode.
all right, see you, everybody.
See ya.